Oh, it scared the heck out of us. How would you like to have armed agents with flak jackets come into your office, a business office, and say, we're going to take all your books and records? Yes, their intent was to scare us, and they did it.
Now all of a sudden, we weren't running a business anymore. We were having to defend every aspect of our business, and yet had done nothing wrong.
But here we say, well, the IRS is entrenched and you can't change it. Well, I disagree, and I think people are fed up with it, and I think over the next several years you're going to see major changes.
The IRS, a threat to our constitutional rights. This is the story of one company that is fighting back against the IRS and its violations of basic rights guaranteed under the Constitution. It is unfortunately one of many such stories, which have no place in a land so blessed with the ideas of freedom and liberty. The Amcor Capital Corporation is located in the Coachella Valley just south of Palm Springs, California. It's an arid region more noted for its golf courses than its agriculture. But Amcor, through the application of new irrigation methods and the cultivation of new grape varieties and new date processing methods, has established a successful farming and land management company.
We're sitting here in Coachella Valley, which is a fantastic farming area of the country. It's all irrigated ground, and we brought about $50 million to the Coachella Valley in the years 1981 to 1986. We developed a little over 3,000 acres of table grapes and developed a couple hundred acres of dates during that period of time. This capital came from investors all over the country. We had investors in every state in the United States, and people would love to come to the Palm Springs area of California to see what we're doing with agriculture.
Well, as you see, we have tremendous capital outlays in our vineyard, our wells, trellis systems, and drip irrigation. The actual outlay would be between $10,000 and $14,000 an acre. A well like this is $100,000. We have trellis systems, drip irrigation that run in the $1,000 per acre. And out of that cost, approximately half of that is for labor to train up the vines, get them into a position to put a crop out, and keep the vineyard in proper condition.
Amcor started with 160 acres, I believe, in 1981, and the growth now to 1995, they're in excess of 2,000 acres, and they're supplying 10% of all the grapes consumed in the United States from that time period of May 15th to approximately July 1st. So they're definitely a huge factor.
Amcor is really an American success story, one of turning investment capital and a good idea into a productive operation that employs thousands of people and contributes to the gross national product, creating wealth and prosperity. An American success story, except for one stumbling block: the Internal Revenue Service of the United States of America.
Okay,
the date is March 21st, 1989.
Okay, we're going to go in all four doors, 0900. Bill, 08 5930. I want you to cut the telephone lines and then go to your place. At 0900, we're going in. Charlie, I want you to go straight to the computer room. Be sure to secure all the computer data. Everybody else in the three entrances, we're going in 0900 hot. Round up everyone, bring them to the reception area. You got that? You got that? We're going in 0900.
At approximately 9 o'clock that morning, 25 armed CID agents with flak jackets and guns came into our office, and 3 of them cornered me in my office and said, we're here to take all of your books and records. And they stripped all of the accounting information from our office. They even went into our computers and stripped all the computer material off of our file. They come in with their search warrant and take all your books and records, and it's designed to shut you down. If you don't have your records to defend yourself, you can't properly show them why the deductions that were taken were legitimate.
They seemed to have an attitude that day that they assumed we were guilty no matter who we were, no matter where we came from, no matter what kind of a track record we had in our past. They didn't care. They basically treated us like we were more like drug traffickers.
And it's very traumatic to be working in a quiet suburban office to all of a sudden look up and find armed agents with guns drawn come in and point a loaded firearm at you and herd you with other people into a small reception area and stand there guarding you like you're some kind of criminal.
By the end of the day, 265 boxes of files had been removed. Employees were shaken, and Amcor principals tried to reason why this raid had occurred. 6 months prior to the raid, a civil audit had been done in the Amcor offices, lasting close to 3 months. The IRS had copied virtually all of the partnership and corporate financial records with the company's full cooperation. Several previous audits of Amcor had been concluded successfully. Was something found in the records that would warrant an armed raid?
We were not surprised that they were auditing us, and in fact, we knew that that was going to be their last chance, because when the law was changed in '86, we discontinued doing any tax shelter programs. The last tax shelter programs we did were in November 1986, and here we are the summer of '88. So they have to find out whether there were any deficiencies or any problems with those tax shelters prior to March of '89. They left our offices in September of '88, and we heard nothing from them again until March of '89, March 21st, 1989. And that's when the search warrant occurred, and they came in and took all our books and records.
At 5:30 p.m. on June 8, 1989, a little over 2 months after the raid, Bob Wright received a call from the Wall Street Journal to question him about the heretofore sealed affidavit that permitted the search warrant. The reporter was the first person to notify Amcor that the affidavit was unsealed and that they were the subject of a criminal investigation. The next day, the story ran in the Wall Street Journal and was subsequently picked up by other papers. IRS probe of farm tax shelters. Amcor investors targeted by IRS for back taxes. $1 billion in fraudulent tax deductions. June 9th was the first meeting with the IRS. On the same morning the headlines appeared in the Wall Street Journal, IRS agents arranged their first meeting with Amcor. In the meeting, the IRS agent in charge of the investigation played an audio tape with a conversation between an Amcor attorney and an attorney representing a farmer that owed Amcor money. The segment sounded defamatory and alarming. In addition, they knew someone was acting as a secret informant for the IRS. In July of '89, the IRS sent Amcor grossly inaccurate tax disallowance letters, requiring Amcor to send copies to 1,000 investors, spreading alarm and distrust. 2 months later, the letters were unilaterally retracted with the statement, "We regret any inconvenience it may have caused." In the summer of 1990, the grand jury was convened to determine if there was evidence of criminal activity on the part of Amcor.
What they were looking for did not exist, and I was able to convince the grand jury that what they were looking for did not exist. It was not going to be found. So their smoking gun ended up being non-existent as well, and it was shortly after that that the grand jury was dismissed. No indictments went down. Again, empty allegations with empty threats. But again, by being as thorough, as candid, as frank, giving them more really than they asked for, again sustained our own allegations that we had in fact violated no laws, that we had instead had an incredible paper trail showing every move that we had made since the company came into being.
To this day, Amcor has not been found to be deficient in any IRS filings or guilty of any criminal activity. Yet they have endured 7 years of intrusion and attack. Through the deposition process and through their experience in dealing with the IRS over the years, Amcor executives have a personal insight into the IRS and conclude it is truly a government agency out of control. They express disbelief and outrage that this could happen in America.
It seemed to be a personal attack as well as a corporate attack. Their goal seemed to be to run us out of business as the general partner so that they would have access to all 4,000 individual limited partners. And that was clear as time went on. It was just very clear what their intention was to get us out from underneath the structure so that they could have access to those limited partners.
I believe that they zeroed in the fact that we were one of the largest agricultural syndicators in the United States, and they wanted to make an example of us. So they went to all lengths to try to prove that we were doing something wrong and therefore we should be stopped. They went to the length so far that after the search warrant in March of '89, they went down to Texas and interviewed a government agent, Bobby Cobb Adams, and some other farmers in the area, and found out that this government agent had actually falsified government documents, had taken bribes, had forged checks to be able to collect money from the lead farmer and be able to falsify these contracts that we knew nothing about. In his deposition, he clearly says that Amcor knew nothing about this. The government learns this in the spring of '89, but because it's not what they want to hear, they bury it. The cover-up was on. The cover-up was underway. They didn't want to hear that. They wanted to find out that Amcor was involved in a scam to scam the federal government. Instead of finding that out, they found that the federal government was involved in the scam and Amcor was not involved in it whatsoever. It's an unbelievable story.
For innocent employees to be treated like criminals is unconscionable. For innocent employees to be victimized and to suffer the trauma of an armed invasion is something that shouldn't happen in this country, not in this country. That happens in Russia, that happens in China. It's, there was no dignity to it, and taking away a person's dignity and taking away a person's humanity is by far, I feel, the worst thing you can do to an individual. And it did happen to individuals. They may have seen the company as a group, but it wasn't a group. It was each individual was there, and each individual suffered their own degree of humiliation of being treated that way, and had their own degree of fear.
They thought this was a huge tax shelter case. It was wonderful to set us as an example, expose it. Their publicity headlines in the Wall Street Journal is $1 billion in false tax deductions. The number was inflated. It had nothing to do with reality. We never took anywhere near $1 billion of tax deductions in all our years. The agent submitted a list of the partnerships that he supposedly thought we had formed. And when you examine that list, there were over 60 partnerships on that list that had absolutely nothing to do with us whatsoever, but he, in his wisdom, had taken all the partnerships that had the address of 5000 Birch Street and determined that they were all ours. It's only a 6-story office building with about 15 different companies there. But he put it on the list that all of those partnerships were ours and they were all false tax deductions. No truth to it all.
You find that friends, investors, colleagues, business partners, many people feel that once allegations have been made, you're tainted. There's no smoke without fire idea. So you feel violated. You feel that every belief, every value that you have had as a child growing up, learning about patriotism, learning about our judicial system, learning about how Thomas Jefferson and George Washington conceived of this country, and then to discover that armed agents can come in and literally wipe your history away and not allow you to have access to that history, not allow you to run your business or your life in a normal day-to-day manner when you have done nothing wrong. That feeling of helplessness creates anger. It creates cynicism. I found myself angry because I felt like I had been robbed of beliefs I had had my entire life. I felt like I had lost the most valuable thing that I had ever grown up with, had been ripped away from me, and I didn't know why.
According to our lawyers, of course, our constitutional rights were emasculated by what they did. I think the most disturbing thing is the fact that, yes, there was certainly a civil audit going on, or at least the guise of a civil audit, but preliminary to the armed invasion and after the armed invasion, there was never a civil dialogue with the IRS people. They never came in and asked questions to us. It was a unilateral assault without giving us the full benefit of explaining, what some of their concerns may have been. To my knowledge, they've never come out and seen our field operations. There was a prejudice in that everything was a sham. There were no assets. There was no real estate, when in fact there were at one point 30,000 acres of real estate. The investors were, it was all phony deal. In the spring of '89, we distributed, I think, $60 million to our limited partners when we had some large real estate sales. Basically, it was a prejudicial, predetermined, premeditated scheme designed to enhance the careers of many bureaucrats, when in fact, as the evidence unfolded, the culprits were really some Texas farmers linked up with a corrupt USDA official. But that, when that evidence surfaced, it was too late for the government to turn back. They had decided that we were the victims. They were committed. They exposed themselves. They were committed to the press, and they were going to find one way to destroy us if they had to fabricate the way. And in fact, they did fabricate many ways. And I think the demise of the criminal investigation is testament to the fact that there really was nothing that they could connect us to.
I would say that the common thread of failure throughout the investigation that the government has made against us, they have not done their homework. They did not know who they were up against. They did not know enough about the company, nor about the principles of the company, nor about the employees and the investors of the company. They underestimated their enemy. A classic failure in any war is to know your enemy and to underestimate your enemy, and that's exactly what the government did. They did not expect us to stand up and fight. They did not expect us to stand by our own veracity, our own credibility, and that's why it's failed, because we didn't give in. We were innocent, we were standing by that innocence, and we were going to prove it. They could not prove their allegations because they didn't have any proof. And we survived long enough and had the courage not only of ourselves and our own employees, but also of our investors behind us, that we were able to survive this onslaught.
In January of 1995, Amcor filed a $1 billion suit against 20 individual IRS employees on the grounds of violations of constitutional rights, conspiracy, invasion of privacy, and unlawful disclosure of confidential tax return information.
They contended that we took $1 billion of false tax deductions, so our suit against these 21 agents is for $1 billion. Now that's a huge number, I realize, but we believe that the harm that they did to us and our investors and our stockholders is astronomical. Nobody will believe in defending this case, starting back in 1988 and going forward, that between ourselves, our limited partners, we have probably got $30 million of legal costs. And we're still here. And we intend to continue to be running our business, but this is a terrible drain on capital and energies and resources of our business. But we think it's a fight that we have to continue, because it's not right that when you think you're abiding by the laws, somebody can come in and try to shut you down.
The First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States guarantees every citizen freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of access, and the right to petition your government. And in this case, the IRS intentionally foreclosed Amcor and its principals from going to Congress to get an investigation started. The IRS specifically lied to Congress about their investigation of Amcor, specifically told Congress that they had investigated internally and found there was no abusive conduct on behalf of the IRS, and that was a total falsehood. And what they did was foreclose the ability of Amcor to go to Congress to get an investigation started and stopped our First Amendment rights from being exercised. They also played havoc with newspapers. The IRS specifically went to the Wall Street Journal, disclosed an affidavit in the criminal search warrant in order to engender publicity to ruin Amcor and stop Amcor from being able to exist for the next 5 or 6 years. And they almost succeeded.
The Fourth Amendment to the Constitution guarantees freedom from unlawful search and seizure. This is perhaps the most visible and direct violation of the rights of all involved.
The Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees due process, guarantees every citizen that they will have a right to have their government act fairly, to investigate fairly, and not to abuse their powers. When they investigate Amcor Capital Corporation,
has to do it procedurally correct and substantively has to give Amcor the right to defend itself from plaintiff's accusers